So far, all my videos have been about the fundamentals of epiphysics. This video is a temporary departure from that plan. Instead, it is about a practical issue and the empowering insights that applied epiphysics brings to it. Originally, I intended to wait to make such videos until I had established a firm foundation of videos on epiphysical theory. But I have changed my mind about that because I see this subject as being vitally important, and the sooner people understand it, the better. So what is the power ethic? Why is it invalid? And why is understanding that fact so important? In any subject, a good understanding of the fundamental principles is important. It brings an elegant simplicity to the subject and a clarity that grounds one's ideas, protecting against erroneous flights of overly intellectual fancy. Such a solid grounding is essential for the subject of ethics, because the power ethic is fed by wishful thinking, and thus can lead even the sharpest intellects seriously astray. I highly recommend a talk about ethics given by Bob Podolsky at Libertopia 2013. A link to the YouTube video is in the description. In the video, Bob provides a very simple yet powerful explanation of the fundamentals of ethics. I also recommend his book Flourish, which expands upon the subject of ethics and discusses the power ethic, which Bob only mentions briefly in the video. However, I found the explanation of why the power ethic is invalid stated in Bob's book to be deeply unsatisfactory, so I applied epiphysical theory to the issue and came up with the real reason. I see a clear understanding of the power ethic, and especially why it is invalid, as extremely important knowledge. Knowing the real reason it is invalid sheds an empowering light deep into the heart of our current collective human condition. It helps us to see that the power ethic has a glass ceiling and how to break through that ceiling. That is vitally important because of the deadly grip that the power ethic currently has on humanity. It is literally an urgent matter of survival for our species that we learn to transcend its limitations. So let's understand the power ethic, why it is invalid, and how to break through its glass ceiling. As Bob explains in his talk, the subject of ethics is not nearly so complicated as many make it out to be. In fact, the concept of an ethic is very simple. Ethics have two components. They consist of a value one would like to increase and an idea of how to go about increasing said value. Clearly, then, there are an infinite number of ethics because there are an unlimited number of values one might seek to increase, and for each value, an unlimited number of possible ideas about how to increase it. However, only a very small fraction of ethics are valid. In other words, only a very small fraction of ethics actually work. This is a very important point to understand. What makes an ethic valid is that it works. That is to say that by enacting the idea, one actually does get more of what is valued. Bob claims that as a result of decades of experiments, which he and a colleague performed, it was shown conclusively that there are only a very limited number of values and ideas which result in a valid ethic. They found that only the 5 following values work as a component of a valid ethic. They are love, creativity, awareness, objective truth, and personal evolution. Let's call them the valid values. Bob and his colleague found that for the purposes of constructing a valid ethic, all the valid values are essentially the same, and that by increasing any one of them, they all increase. I have not seen Bob's experimental evidence, but I believe that his reported findings are true because, as we shall see, such results are entirely what one would expect according to epiphysical theory. The easiest way to describe a valid ethic is by defining what constitutes an ethical act. An ethical act is one that increases any valid value for at least one person, without limiting or decreasing any valid value for anyone. The person performing the act can also be a recipient of the increase. That definition certainly sounds reasonable to me, at least in terms of what is usually considered to be ethical in a moral sense. However, as stated above, it is important to understand that an ethical act is one which works. So the fact that a valid ethic works needs to be explained if we are going to understand them properly. Bob claims to have amassed plenty of experimental data that they are the only ethics that work, but has only conjecture as to why they work. This is where epiphysics comes into its own. Epiphysics explains the why. So let's look at what applied epiphysics has to say about the validity of ethics. Please understand that what I am about to say is based on epiphysical information, only part of which I have covered in my previous videos. The rest will be covered over the course of several future videos, and is far too much to more than summarize very briefly here. That understood, let's look at what epiphysics has to say about ethics. Epiphysics recognizes that the universe is a holistic living entity, and that every component of the universe is made of the vital essences of life. All of physics can be understood as being the consequence of the evolution of life unfolding in the way that it does. So what I am saying here does not violate the laws of physics, and in fact works through them. The way that the unfolding of life takes place is according to what I call the cycle of the evolution of life. That cycle has a fractal nature which synchronizes everything in the universe so as to complete the unfolding of life with perfect mathematical precision. Everything is organized perfectly to fulfill the purpose of the universe, which is for life to continually know more and more of its creative will. Every cycle by which life evolves starts with a creative choice. That creative choice is processed in 12 stages. Crucially, at the exact halfway point, a new truth is realized, opening a door on a whole new paradigm of knowledge. When we understand that this is how the universe works to fulfill its purpose, we can see that everything that happens in the universe is chosen specifically to unfold knowledge based upon new truths. Thus, evolution is a process that depends upon the constant revelation of a sequence of truths which is infinite and therefore endless. This explains why creativity, truth, and personal evolution are all valid values, and for ethical purposes amount to the same thing. But what about love and awareness? Why awareness is an ethically valid value is easy to grasp. It is because when we are being made aware of anything, we are being made aware of a new truth. So truth and awareness are basically the same thing. Similarly, creativity and love are the same thing. We can see that this is true when we contemplate a definition of love given by the late great Dr. Arthur Janov, which I find to be profound. It is this: Love is giving others what they need to be their real selves. Since the creative will of the universe is continually providing an ongoing reality that is perfectly crafted to show us new truths, we can also see that love is one of the valid values, and that they are all essentially the same for ethical purposes. In other words, creative will and truth are the same thing seen from different perspectives. It is now only a small step to understand why the valid values are the only values that work ethically. It is because, to the degree that its method is valid, an ethic that aims to increase any of the valid values will naturally be in alignment with the purpose of the universe. Thus, acts based upon such an ethic will garner support from ethically minded people and will also seem to be blessed with miraculous luck and synchronicity according to the measure of the alignment. Conversely, any unethical acts meet with failure to the degree that they are out of alignment with the truth-enhancing purpose of the universe. Generally, this is easy to understand except for a massive paradox where the power ethic is concerned. The power ethic values power. Proponents of the power ethic seek to increase their personal power according to the principle of might makes right. Sometimes that means cooperating with other proponents of the power ethic, but in general, the principle of might makes right sees proponents of the power ethic ruthlessly seeking to dominate and enslave others. The more ruthlessly devious and unscrupulous their methods are, the more success a proponent of the power ethic seems to meet with. On the face of things, the power ethic seems to work very well, in spite of the fact that it is literally the most invalid ethic possible. That it is an invalid ethic is clear to see. Robbing others of their own agency by dominating and enslaving them is deeply unloving behavior, which definitely diminishes their creative freedom severely. Such domination is achieved by lies and dishonest machinations, and thus it also diminishes truth and awareness. So what is going on here? Why does such an immoral ethic seem to be so successful? Bob's explanation for why the power ethic doesn't work is that it is by its very nature parasitic, and that eventually the parasite will kill the host, thus losing any power it accrued. As I stated before, though, I found that explanation profoundly unsatisfactory. The reason why I found Bob's explanation unsatisfactory is that one only has to look at the lives of people who were skilled practitioners of the power ethic to see many cases where they died of natural causes after living long lives in the lap of luxury and apparently ever-growing power. Of course, there are many examples of tyrants who were eventually overthrown and killed, usually in horrific fashion. Yet their overthrow is not evidence that the power ethic doesn't work, only of their lack of skill. In general, the general populace don't even know the names of the most skillful practitioners who rule over them, let alone have any real hope of overthrowing them. To my mind, a satisfactory explanation of why the power ethic is invalid must not wait for some final disaster after a long period of success for its reason. To be satisfactory, the reason needs to point out a continuous and immediate failure. Its most skillful practitioners do seem to accrue power on an ongoing basis. So on the face of things, finding a reason why the power ethic might be invalid is a very knotty problem. However, we live in a world that is dominated by the power ethic, and that blinds us to the answer. We need a whole new ethical paradigm to see beyond our habitual perspective. Thankfully, epiphysics provides that new paradigm, and a wonderfully simple answer. It is that Despite the very convincing appearances, a practitioner of the power ethic is not empowered by it. Now we have the answer, but perhaps it is as yet unconvincing. That is because there is a common confusion about who and what we really are. Remember that the definition of love that I quoted earlier was, love is giving others what they need to be their real selves. Epiphysics is based upon the understanding that life and its two aspects, knowing and creative will, are more fundamental than material bodies. All the matter in the universe exists within life, not the other way around. From that perspective, we are not our bodies. They are just vehicles that souls use to interface with this world and have experiences within it. In other words, they are our personal worldly avatars. In addition to that, our worldly personas can be real or unreal to one degree or another. How real or unreal we are depends upon how much repressed pain we have warping our creative self-expression. We live in a world dominated by people who practice the power ethic with vicious ruthlessness. Thus we are all affected by its machinations to some degree. The paradigm of the power ethic traumatizes the vast majority of us in childhood, so that we all have a certain amount of repressed pain, which can then be used to control us. In general, the amount of repressed pain we have is a measure of our mental health. How much pain we carry and how it is related to our personal needs is not a matter of luck. I have heard it said many times that we cannot be proud of our ancestors because we do not choose our families, DNA, the social economic status of our parents, how mentally healthy they are, etc. That is not true. Epiphysics understands that every detail of our birth circumstances is created perfectly to provide the environment that we require for our new life experience. This includes circumstances which cause repressed pain. Thus, the reality or unreality of a soul's persona is matched with their dedication to the power ethic. In order to practice the power ethic, it is necessary to deny the real self and believe that one is a false, unreal self with unreal needs. No real self has a real need to subjugate the creativity of others. All real selves would feel painfully ashamed should they even inadvertently commit an unethical act. The pain they would feel if they deliberately performed the kind of acts required to dominate and enslave others would be devastatingly greater, commensurate with the wrongness of the act. A repressed pain represents a continuous denial of a need. It numbs us to the need, so that we no longer know that we have such needs. This dulls our ability to empathize with others, whose needs are similarly being denied. That leaves us open to a secondary level of repressed pain. Dulled to the pain of others, we may inadvertently deny their needs without being fully aware that our behavior is unloving. Then, in addition to the repressed pain of our own denied needs, buried beneath it, we will also have the pain of having done the same to others. This is how a soul's journey into the realm of the power ethic begins. In addition to the inadvertently unethical behavior I just described, pain has a tendency to make a person lash out irrationally. Then, if they don't allow themselves to acknowledge their error and feel the resultant shame, it will build up inside a soul's subconscious mind. This will eventually lead to a habit of denial in order to repress the pain of their growing shame. It is a slippery slope into narcissism. It is also a descent into deeper and deeper pain caused by more and more unethical power-oriented behavior. At each stage on this journey, the soul is smothering the life out of its love, creativity, objectivity, and awareness under the agonizingly crushing weight of pain. In order to endure such an existence, narcissists must dance to the tune of their almost complete unreality. They require the illusion of fake power and love to distract themselves from the pain of the repressed feelings of powerlessness and lack of love inside them. This is not a state of empowerment. It is in fact a state of being enslaved to unreal needs. That truth is expressed beautifully by a line in the film Seventh Son. Just before she is killed by the evil witch queen, the hero's mother expresses this truth saying, "You are a slave to darkness, Mother Malkin, not its queen." So those who practice the power ethic only do so to distract themselves from their pain and from accepting an ocean of guilt and shame within themselves. Far from being empowered by it, they are made so weak that they must attempt to dominate and suck the creativity out of others in order to avoid feeling their pain. They are constantly trying to create evidence to contradict their pain and convince themselves that they are not powerless and unlovable. The irony is that that powerful, lovable essence still resides within them, overlaid by a thick layer of pain. When we understand this new ethical paradigm, an interesting question arises. If the practitioners of the power ethic are not being empowered by it, then where is all the power going? Is there some devilish soul who reaps all the power? The answer is clear to see. There is no soul reaping the power, because no soul is immune from the disempowerment. So where is the power going? The answer is that it goes into the power ethic itself. The power ethic is like a meme virus that infects human minds and institutions. It is a dead system animated by stolen aliveness. It feeds off human creativity to acquire its power. It is an artificial intelligence, and not actually being alive, it has no creativity itself. This is an important point to understand, because it means that the power of the power ethic has a limit, a glass ceiling, so to speak. The reason that the power ethic has a limit is that only people who have some amount of narcissism, i.e. some pain and denied need within them, can be enslaved by the power ethic. It can only feed from those whose creativity is blighted by it, and the more dedicated the soul, the less creative. If souls can transcend their flirtation with the power ethic, then they can be free of it forever. That is because those who have no denied need behave ethically, and their alignment with universal love brings them fulfillment with perfect synchronicity. This has two consequences. Firstly, it means that, because we came to this planet, we all have some degree of dedication to the power ethic. Secondly, it means that we can break through the power ethic's glass ceiling by turning within and grieving our pain, by allowing ourselves to feel our denied needs and thus transform them into fulfillment. There are ways to do that, but that is a topic for future videos. I believe that transcending the power ethic is an important stage in the evolution of every soul. I also think that the majority of human souls incarnated on this planet are not yet at that stage. That is not a reason to be black-pilled, however. It is clear that there are many souls who are at that level, and only a critical number of them are required to uplift this world into a much more ethical state. So those of us who are aware of the power ethic and how to transcend it have a task ahead of us. It is not an external fight. In fact, it is not a fight at all. It is simply a matter of going within and healing the remnants of our exploration of the power ethic. There is nobody to stop us but ourselves. That is all for now. Thank you for your attention.